what's up? Welcome back to my channel. This is Bake Like Anita, and I'm very excited today because I am doing a cake decorating video after a very long time. So it's about like 10:30 in the evening, which is usually the time that I get around to decorating cakes because I work during the day. So it's about 10:30 in the evening and I'm about to start decorating this cake. So then I just thought, why not make a video? So I do cake kind of content. So I'm a baker like Anita. I do cake content, I do cake decorating, and I share recipes and some of my business journey, more on the entrepreneurial side. So if you're interested in any or all of that, please do stay tuned and watch the whole video so you can see how I make this cake that I'm making today. So it's a chocolate cake for a 22nd birthday, and I went out earlier just to get some supplies. I'd really appreciate it if you just click the subscribe button, and because it's December time, I have a bit more time in my hands to edit the videos a lot quicker, so hopefully I'll be having more content on this channel. I'm gonna firstly level the cakes because they obviously aren't leveled. That's why I need to level them, and then I'm just gonna fill them with a I think a caramel filling, and then just put some flowers and a nice drip on it. So yeah. So here I just put a bit of buttercream on the cake stand that I'm going to be using just to secure the cake board and ensure that it doesn't shift around while I'm making the cake. And then I put some more buttercream on top just so that I can kind of stick the cake layers on top. So I just spread it around a little bit before adding the layers of chocolate sponge cake, just to make sure that you obviously need to have the cake completely cooled before you do any of this, otherwise your cake is not going to come out right because the buttercream is going to melt. So I've just been recently starting to do this actually, and it's not something that I usually used to do, but I find that it's very helpful to put a layer of buttercream around the edge of the cake, just to ensure that whatever filling you have inside doesn't spill out onto the sides, but also it's a good way to ensure that you get an equal layer of buttercream or any of the fillings in the cake. So it's great to use a piping bag for this, also because you get to I think save quite a bit on buttercream and not waste it at all, but also it just comes out a lot neater, and when you cut the slices of the cake it looks much more put together. So this is what I've been doing so far. This is a layer of on the, I wanted to say periphery, but on the edge of the cake it's buttercream, and then on the inside is just some chocolate ganache that's kind of been whipped to the consistency of buttercream, and then I topped it with some caramel toffee that I had. So yeah, this is just what I've been doing to layer the cakes. Obviously you can put whatever flavorings you like, but I thought chocolate ganache and caramel would be nice for a chocolate cake. At this stage, don't be afraid to kind of move the cake around, just to ensure that it's at kind of the level that you want, because some of the cake layers, as you can see, rise unevenly. And this filling of the buttercream on the edge of the cake, this is very helpful to ensure that you get a straight looking cake, because if you just go with some buttercream on top, then it's not guaranteed that you'll get kind of an equal layer. So it's good to fill in kind of all of the spaces, and especially using a piping bag, just so that you ensure a nice distribution of the buttercream and that it is all kind of in equal layers. So this is something that's also new in my technique that I've been kind of watching other bakers do and not really implementing, but I highly recommend doing this to just fill in the different spaces between the layers, just so that you can have a much straighter looking cake even when the layers of the actual cake themselves were not that even. So I just went around with spatula just to even out the spaces and just to ensure that the buttercream is kind of equally distributed across the whole cake. So what's really great about a spatula is obviously that it's angled so that you can get a completely flat surface, but also that it can kind of pick up all of the buttercream, and you can keep scraping it and placing it in the parts where you think it's uneven, so it's useful to patch it. But also because it's a crumb coating, you're going to lift up some crumbs in the process of doing this crumb coating. So then I usually just pick up the crumbs and kind of place them on the side and take a new bit of buttercream, just so that I don't keep reapplying crumbs onto the cake. But it's also completely fine if you get crumbs, because it is a crumb coating, and this is just so that you cover the cake and the other colors of the buttercream can come on later once the cake is set. So I just added some more buttercream with the piping bag. Like I said before, it's much nicer to use a piping bag because you can evenly distribute it, and it's great because you can use kind of the tip of the piping bag to fill different spaces like I am doing now. So sometimes it's quite difficult to get in the cracks, but also on the lowest level, on the bottom of the cake nearest to the cake board, it's sometimes very difficult to distribute the layers of buttercream. So at this point, you just continue to spread the buttercream around to ensure that the whole cake is covered in all of the areas where the cake is still exposed. Just make sure that you fill in the buttercream in all of those different spaces. So then I used a plastic spatula. This is very important, I think, just for making the cake edges much more pronounced, but also to make the cake a lot straighter and pick up a lot of the buttercream that is extra in some places, but also place it in other areas. So I really do advise using both the spatula and the scraper. So then I'm using plastic straws here just to ensure that the cake doesn't move around and to secure the cake, because it is quite a tall cake since it is 4 layers. So I just prefer to use plastic straws just to ensure that it is safe and secured, and that during transportation especially, the cake layers don't kind of slide off of each other. So then you don't want to kind of show that there are straws. That would be very strange. So I just covered it in some buttercream to ensure that everything is covered and secure. But I really do enjoy using these. You can use dowels as well, but I prefer to use plastic straws. They are much easier to find and they're a lot cheaper also. So just, yeah, covered that. And it does help to make sure that the cake is a lot more straight and secure. So at this stage also, don't be afraid to touch the cake. If you see that it's slanting towards a certain position, then you just literally touch it and move it to make sure that it's as straight as you want it to be, because otherwise once the buttercream has set in the fridge, then you really won't be able to influence kind of the cake's shape or the way that it is standing. So I just went through with my scraper again, just to make sure that the cake layers are straight and that the buttercream is evenly distributed. And yeah, so then after that I just put the cake in the fridge just so that it can set. I set it for about an hour minimum, but you can go for a bit longer than that. This is just to ensure that the actual crumb coating is set and that the first layer of buttercream is kind of secured on the cake. So then I went on to mix up my colors. You can obviously do as much any color combination as you want, but I always emphasize using gel paste because the liquid kind of food coloring will just change the consistency of your buttercream. So I was going for a more pastel kind of tone of colors, so I wanted to make the blue as pale as possible, as well as the purple and the pink. So I just kept adding more white to ensure that the cake, the color is exactly the way that I wanted it to be. But yeah, like I said, the gel colors are the best to use because they don't alter the consistency of your buttercream. So once my cake was kind of cold and the crumb coating was set, I then came in with the different colors of buttercream that I had mixed and kind of just put splodges of it across the cake in different colors. So you don't want to put the same color in the same place. You kind of want to mix the different colors in different parts. So I just went around with the purple and put it all over, and then with the pink, and then with the blue. What's nice here is because the cake has been set for like an hour or so, then it's much easier to kind of put the buttercream on without it spreading or mixing with any of the crumbs or the white layer of buttercream. So again, I want to emphasize the importance of letting your cake set in the fridge, just so that when you're adding the different colors, it doesn't interrupt with the actual color scheme that you have going, and that the first layer is kind of set and you have firm sort of canvas to paint on. After that whole process was done, I then came in with the scraping tool just to make sure that the colors are mixed in properly and make the watercolor effect. So here you can see the importance then of mixing the colors in different kind of distributions, just so that you don't have too much of one color in the same space. And because the cake was cold, it was much easier to move the second layer of buttercream around. So then wherever you see different spaces, or where you can still see the actual cake, the crumb coating, or if there's too much white, then you just fill in those different spaces with the colors that you want, and then come through with the scraper once again to make sure that it's all evenly distributed and that the watercolor effect is still there across the whole cake. So some parts I didn't get all of the cake layers kind of covered, and I was kind of fine with that because I didn't really mind the little bit of the cake showing, because it was meant to be kind of a naked cake, but also just more with the watercolors kind of pronounced. So you can continue to kind of fill out the cake in all the spaces where you see the bits of the cake showing, and cover it with some buttercream, but it's not that important to have it covered, or at least I didn't mind having some of the cake layers showing. And then I just made a small bouquet of flowers using 3 roses. And I think it's important to mention here that you have to cover the cake. You have to cover the stems of the roses, and whether it's florist tape or actual sellotape, just to ensure that whatever is in the flowers doesn't get through into the actual cake, because that can be quite that's won't be good for the people who will be consuming the cake. So just ensure that the stems are covered, whether it's in a florist tape or even sellotape works fine, but just to ensure, because you don't know if the flowers were kind of organic or what was put in the flowers, but just to ensure that it's safe to kind of consume. You have to cover the stems of the flowers or roses, whatever you're using. So I just put 3 on the right hand side and 1 at the bottom of the cake. And then from the bouquet I had a bit of this, I think it's gypsophilia or baby's breath, I'm not sure, but these small flowers just to add and make the cake look more of a bouquet instead of just the roses, because it can look quite empty. So you can obviously add it in whatever configuration you want, but I thought the nice small white flowers would complement the pink roses quite nicely.